Welcome to the Reduce Cyber Risk Podcast, July 17th, 2019, episode 44, Domain 5, Identity and Access Management. Welcome to the Reduce Cyber Risk Podcast, where we provide you the training and tools you need to pass the CISSP exam while enhancing your cybersecurity career. Hi, my name is Shon Gerber, and I'm your host for this action-packed, informative podcast. Join me each week as I provide the information you need to grow your cybersecurity knowledge so that you're better prepared to pass the CISSP exam. All right, let's get going. Hey y'all, this is Shon Gerber again from Reduce Cyber Risk, and we're in this wonderful state of Kansas in the United States, and things are great. We just got done with our July 4th weekend here in the United States. It's actually been a little while, but kind of want to talk about that a little bit, and had a great time over the July 4th weekend. I had some time with the family, and my kids just I love them, but they drive you crazy. So if any of you guys, if any of you all have children, you will understand that, yes, teenagers are a lot of fun. And in my case, they keep me hopping like there is no tomorrow. I've got two that just graduated high school, and in the United States, that's a big event. So one's going off to college, so we'll be prepping for college here before long. And then I've got another one who's going to be joining us. Probably we're going to be starting up a business, my wife is. And so therefore, with between her business and the kids coming to college, and between, I have three others still in school, one more senior, it is a busy day. And since we basically have seven children total, and of that, four of them have been adopted, and so we're very fortunate. It also has added a lot of challenges that are a lot of fun to kind of work through, and I say fun in air quotes. So yeah, but other than that, life is good. I cannot complain at all. All right, we're gonna get into our training, and today we're gonna talk about CISSP cybersecurity integration was going to be identity governance. Again, this is over Domain 5. CISSP training is going to be managing the identity and access provisioning lifecycle. This is Domain 5, obviously. CISSP exam question will be usernames and passwords and preventative controls. All right, before we get started, just want to put out a plug out there for the CISSP training courses. You can get these. Yes, you can. You can get these in your hands. Or actually, yeah, clicking in your hands or in your eyeballs. Yeah, it's kind of gross, actually. But in your eyeballs, you can get these by going to udemy.com. That's UDEMY.com. And depends who you talk to. Some people call it Udemy. Some people call it Udemy. Depends how you want to say it, but it calls different ways. But you can go to udemy.com, or you can go to reducecyberrisk.com, CISSP-training, and that will point you in the right direction for the different domains. Again, there's 8 different domains. You can get those at your leisure, and you can get access to all of the CISSP training that I put out, along with exam questions. You can get those as well. And I also put out exam questions during the week, and you can get access to that just by going to Reduce Cyber Risk and becoming part of my email team. And you can get all that as well. So you get exam questions, you get the CISSP. Oh, it's a plethora, a cornucopia of information available to you at your fingertips. All right, let's get going on into our training. Okay, CISSP and cybersecurity integration. The Infosec, this came from Infosec Institute. This is the reference. And again, the links will all be in the back in the final part of the presentation, or the podcast, I should say, and also in the show notes as well. So they'll all be there and available for you. Objective 5.3 of your CISSP, manage the identity and access provisioning lifecycle. And then the topic today will be identity governance. Again, this is an article from Infosec Institute. Now, managing the identity and access provisioning lifecycle. This is crucial to have effective control over your logical environment. And when we talk about different environments, you have your basic physical environment, and you have your logical environment, which is the aspects around the technical pieces, right? That all falls within the logical aspect of your specific environment. And these include operational documentation maintenance, monitoring, reporting, access rules, roles, and entitlement maintenance, and we'll get into those. Those are big $10 words, and obviously Infosec Institute is a lot of really smart people because they use these big $10 words, and I struggle with $10 words, but we'll try to make them simple because that's the whole purpose. The CISSP training made simple. The operational documentation maintenance, this helps develop structure, provides oversight, and how to implement the local access controls. So basically what it comes down to is you want to put in access controls, and these are logical, right? These are all logical controls, but you have to have this documentation around your operational things that you put in place. So you have your basically your IT functions, but then you have your operational functions that work within your organization that makes the operations, the day-to-day things go. And so you need to have this documentation in place. And then what it does, though, is this maintenance aspect is kind of like an assessment piece of this, where you go back in and you'll provide oversight on how to do this. And these can fall under policies. They can fall under different areas as well. But it's basically how it flows into the operational pieces. It also establishes a governance model that helps to ensure compliance. And we talk about this quite a bit in the fact that you need to have some governance model in this. And when we talk about compliance, we don't talk about the big C compliance, we talk about the little c compliance. This would be when you're talking the big C compliance, that means you have regulatory requirements that force you to do these different aspects with your company to ensure that you meet their compliant of the government regulations that may be out there. And this doesn't be state and local regulations. It could be other aspects too. The little c is that you follow the process that you've put in place to comply with the aspects that you're wanting to accomplish. And it also, so that's the whole purpose of it, right, is to have some governance around how to help you get that done. Monitoring and reporting. This is monitoring the compliance with policies and standards. Now, you're just making sure that you meet and you follow through with what you say you're going to do with the policies and standards you have in place. This provides guidance through executive dashboards and reports. So if you can get an executive dashboard, and it could be as simple as you have a spreadsheet that's got little green and little red and little orange. Well, that's not really green, yellow, red. Yeah, green, yellow, red. Yeah, stoplight thing. There's not much of an orange there. That's kind of a blend between yellow and red, orange. But no. So you want to provide the guidance through executive dashboards and reports. That's the whole purpose, right? Some way of measuring how are you doing. What are you doing? How are you doing it? And are you moving forward or are you falling backwards? We don't want to fall backwards. We always want to fall forward. Access rules, roles, and entitlement maintenance. This basically deals with, you have exception management and you have definition of the rules and how you're going to follow these different rules for the roles. So how do you bring things on? How do you take things off? How do you provide provision and deprovision individuals, their devices, all of that. All falls under the access rules and roles. And it basically is the life cycle from beginning to end. How do you start it? How do you end it? How do you decommission it? And if you have that in place, I mean, honestly, that's a big deal. If you can get your access, that whole life cycle piece going and put it in place and start off simple, that does a lot for your company to ensure that it is secure. It is. It really does a great job on that. Another key component is operational readiness advisory. Now, this begins with the various stages around your requirements. So once those are defined and you have your design, your test, and you're doing all the operational onboarding that you need to do, this is where this begins, right? So it's how do you begin to get ready to go? And that's the whole purpose of, I'm getting ready for my operational side. I need some assistance. I need to know what I'm going to do. All right, let's go. And this provides advisory or consultation to the development of these various systems. So it's basically the SME. It's the subject matter expert to help you with, are you ready to go? And give you some guidance around that. Some change management, also around the aspects of change management. And this is the process of managing the change around your identities. And how do they get provision, deprovision? That's the lifecycle piece. But then what is the process for managing the change with those identities? So Bill, who has access to all these file shares, how do you manage his change? So Bill has access to these file shares, but you know what? Now Bill's moved on to a new role, still in the same area, but we need to reduce the level that he has access to. So how do we manage that? There also, it's how do you deal with the communication piece of this? If this built into it, can it be automated? And ideally, in today's world, you can automate so much of this, and it can be done if you utilize SharePoint or something along those lines. It can be automated with it, like not InfoPath's not the right word, but Flow. Flow is the product they use now with SharePoint Online. You can provide this change management advisory piece to people, and that can be really simple. It can be set up in a simple format that will give you what you need. So again, that's change management advisory communications. Now, as you're dealing with identity operations, this includes the access review and reporting. And this is access request, fulfillment, and there's so many other aspects that are around this. And this function is focused specifically on your day-to-day access control requests. This is your provisioning, your administration, all that maintaining of the life cycle that's associated with it. Enforcement of logical access controls is another key component of your identity operations. And then, again, this is the day-to-day stuff. This operations is your day-to-day, get dirty, get in the weeds kind of thing. And then so that's the whole purpose of that. And rules are related to ID, access requests, approvals, and so forth. So you have these rules in place to basically deal with your identification and also anybody who may request access to your specific systems. Again, it's all responsible for the day-to-day ops, and it basically allows you to provide the capability of bringing people on, taking people off. And that's your identity operations function. That's kind of what they called about out there, is that you basically need to have governance, day-to-day operations, and you need to have some way to deal with the life cycle. That's how it all works. Those three pieces will take you a long way. Okay, so that is the discussion around from Infosec Institute. Okay, and we're going to move on into the CISSP training. Okay, so in this CISSP training part, we're going to again talk about 5.3, Managing Identity and Access Provisioning Lifecycle Domain 5. So this is going to be a supplemental, or that part that we saw before is a little bit of a supplemental of what we're going to be talking about today and the rest of this podcast. And basically this refers to change management of accounts. So again, we talk about creation, deletion, and management of these accounts. One of the key points is identity is the most commonly used user account. So you basically are trying to get identity of individuals. And so that's the main part of all this. It's the most common part of a user account, is how do you identify the individual, who they are they the right person that's supposed to be accessing it? Do they have the right credentials and the ability to do their job? All of those things are it's the most common part of a user account specifically. Now, when you're dealing with access control administration, there are three main pieces that you need to be aware of. One is provisioning, the second is account review, and then count revocation, which is basically the deprovisioning or the turning it off of the account. And again, I will tell you, I apologize sometimes, these big $10 words. I try to make them simple, and so therefore they use big words, but then I'll go to some easy one like, yeah, you just have to turn it off. And so I will struggle. And if you're working on your CISSP with the cybersecurity career, here's one thing to keep in mind as you're moving forward. And I don't mean this to offend anybody at all. That is not the intent. But a lot of times cybersecurity individuals will put these big $10 words out there, and they will say big, monstrous words in the thought and hope that it makes them look way smarter than they potentially maybe are. And I'm saying that they're not. I'm just saying that a lot of times I've seen this in meetings a lot, where people will use big $10 words, and I am totally confused, going, what the dickens are you saying? Just use third grade language. I can understand that because that's all I have from a knowledge standpoint. And so therefore, sometimes I'll use a big word, I'll say it out there, and then I'll try to bring it down just a little bit, because honestly, if I get confused, then if I'm confused, I only assume that maybe only about 10% of you all are confused, just because you all are probably way smarter than me. So just kind of keep that in mind as we move forward in the CISSP training. I challenge you to look for the big $10 words and then try to make those simple, because here's the point. If you're going to be a CISO, or if you're going to be someone that's going to provide influence for your board or whomever that in your cybersecurity field, you need to know how to do this. You need to know how to break down the $10 word and put it in terms that for a third grade level. Not because you're dealing with third graders, because that's not the case. So that's one thing. The other thing to think about as I'm on a little bit of a tangent here, but that's one other thing to think about as a cybersecurity professional is do not treat people like they're third graders. Do not, okay? Because I'll tell you right now, most people in the world there's people that are way smarter than all of us, right? But if you can talk to people at a level that is easily understood, and that's why I say the third grade level, because if you can talk at a third grade level to people, that's easily understood by most. And so therefore, if you're talking to your CFO, your CEO, any other C levels, the board, whoever that might be, they're going to want you to talk at that lower level, not because they're stupid or they don't know what the heck they're talking about. It's because it's a language that everybody can understand. When you get these big $10 words that are out there, Your $10 word in cybersecurity is very different than the CFO's $10 word in financial terms. And so therefore, it's important that you bring it to a level where everybody can understand. All right. All right. We've had a little bit of a digress there, but the point of it is just keep it simple, silly. All right. So again, provisioning, account review, and account revocation or deprovisioning or turning it off. Provisioning. So some key points about this is creation of new accounts with privileges. It's important that you keep it as simple as possible. Do not overcomplicate this. And I am guilty of all of those, of making it way more complicated than it needs to be. Thinking, and this kind of comes down to the development space where you create this complicated thing thinking you're going to add features in later on. You never really do, and all these features ever do from a development standpoint is cause risk. So you need to keep it simple as possible. Follow specifically defined processes and procedures. If you don't have the processes and procedures defined, then define them and then follow them. But keep them simple. And then you can move on, you can grow onto these simple procedures as time goes on. You need to have a way to confirm the identity of the individual. It would be photo ID, HR, security clearances, whatever it might be. You need to have that confirmation of their identity in place. This concludes all users, contractors, employees, and so forth. Now, sometimes it may be the simple fact that who confirms that identity. You may rely on the HR person to confirm the identity of it, but you need to keep the process as simple as possible. If it's you that's doing HR and doing provisioning and everything because you are the person that's going to be doing that, then obviously you've got a lot to do. But again, keep it simple as possible and keep the same process. If you have compliance issues to consider, if you have PII or personal identifiable information, then you need to adequately protect that. That it also could be personally identifiable health information as you're dealing with those questions as well. So you need, as a cybersecurity professional, especially studying for your CISSP, you need to understand those key points about this. The birth name, that's another good issue, is that in China privacy aspects, what is the birth name of the individual? Like in my daughter's name was okay, I can't think of her name. It's not good. Her Chinese name. Well, I'll go with my son. So his was Mao Aijie. So that was his Chinese name. But we called him Jax, J-A-X Gerber, right? That's his name. And therefore, his middle name, we call him Mao Aijie. But in China, he was Mao Aijie is what he was. Actually, his middle name's Aijie, somewhere around there. Yeah. Anyway, that's the whole purpose around him. And so those are different aspects that you got to be aware of as you're dealing with compliance issues. Employees, contractors, you need to have a way for them to sign documents as well. How do you confirm that? So if they have used DocuSign or some other document signing technology, that would be extremely valuable. Now, your ongoing maintenance around this piece is you need to audit the accounts. You need to provide and the access to these accounts. You need to have the ability to do that. The process for promotion and departures, employee. I can't even say it. Employee transfers, you need to keep all of those the same. The whole new process of anything that you deal with somebody that enters the role or leaves the role, you need to keep that actually the same as well. So again, these are employee transfers and ongoing maintenance. Now, as you're dealing with account review, some other key points to keep in mind is these need to be reviewed periodically. Do not rely on the fact that these are just going to set them and forget them kind of thing. That's where credentials get added in where they never go away. I've seen it in previous lives many, many times where I would actually go into when I was doing the hacking world, I would go into an account or into a environment. I would see that there was accounts that had been there for 7-8 years, and ask the question, was this person still here? And the account hadn't been used in 7-8 years. And I said, no, that person's left, but the account was still there and active. It wasn't even the point where it was turned off. It was still active. So you need to have that set up, and you also need to ensure that the policies are in place to address audits. Now, we talk about audits. They could be an audit or they could be an assessment. Audit's typically a formal type of thing. It is done usually by a third party or at a minimum an outside resource either within your company that is specifically designed to do audits, or it's actually a third party that maybe you have. It's a sister company, or it could be a company like E&Y, Ernst & Young, or Deloitte, one of them to do an audit on you. You need to have scripts. You can have scripts to run audit reports on your accounts. So hence no activity, logged in for 30 plus days, etc., etc. You could have those in place. And so those are ways you can look at your different accounts and how to review those. Privileges, there's excessive privileges. You need to know as far as that goes. Does someone have more privileges than they need to have, and how do you manage that? Do they have the necessary privileges to do their role? Do they not have the necessary privileges? And do you have a process in place to how to add them privileges in an easy format? I'll be honest, if you can do this, then you're really setting yourself up well. I will say that many of us struggle in this space just because there's so many things to do, and these are one of the things that gets left behind, and it really needs to be one that really needs to be the top priority. Privilege creep, in the case of individuals, of how much creep do they have? No, it's not how much they're creeping. It's how much privileges do they have. So if you have privilege A, and then you move into a new role, now you have privilege B, but you now, because you moved to the new role, you have privilege A and B, and then when you move to a new role, you got privilege A, B, and C. That's privilege creep. That's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Next thing you know, you got a lot. And then audits will help address this as well. Now, you need to consider the principle of least privilege. What do you need to have to get the job done? Do you need it all? Well, no. Okay, so in the case of myself, I have, typically, if you're a cybersecurity person, you should not have admin rights. You just shouldn't, especially if you're dealing with, if you do because you are the only person left, then that's one thing. But then you also need to make sure that you do not use your admin rights, obviously, for surfing the web and doing those things. In my role, they've asked me, said, well, do you want admin rights? I do not see any need for me to have admin rights. The simple fact of it is, one, I'll just mess things up. Two, from a targeting standpoint, I'm probably targeted a little bit more than some people, so therefore I don't want to increase the exposure. So I don't have that stuff, and I just rely on other people to do that. So again, the principle of least privilege. Account revocation. So when an employee departs or leaves, this is i.e. leaves, terminated, resigns, they depart the fix. Okay, that's a flying term. They depart the fix and they leave to a different location. That is when you want to have account revocation. And you need to have a process in place to address these departures. If you do not have a process in place to address these departures, that will be bad, because what happens is these people never go away. And then they're on your books forever. Okay, and if you can tell me the movie, there's a bonus question in there for that. Forever. All right, and then but they're here forever. So you need to have a process to address the departures. I had a lot of coffee this morning. Holy cow, I'm ready to go. HR is usually the ones that are most connected with account revocation. They know who is coming and who's going. And so HR needs to have the ability to basically clean this up. There's an account removal process, and the accounts are removed immediately after leaving. So once a person leaves the area, then the accounts are shut down and they move away. You remove access is disabled for a period of 30 days, and then you delete the accounts after those 30 days are over. So those are kind of the process. You need to have that automated, where once a person leaves, account is removed immediately after leaving. Or it's put into a standby mode at a minimum. And then you remove access. That should be disabled for a period of 30 days. So access is denied, and you hold on to that. And a lot of times people will hold on to these accounts specifically for a reason, that there may be documents that they need to get access to. And so therefore it's important that you look at those documents. You have your supervisors look at the documents with those credentials for a period of 30 days. You then go ahead and you can pull out that information. Then once that's done and you have that set up and the credentials are revoked, then at that point in time, you can delete them after another 30 days. So basically, it's a 90-day process. So in this case, it's 60 days is what I've got called out. But as soon as they leave, the access is removed, is disabled. Do that for 30 days. Once that is done, then you go ahead and delete the accounts after 30 days. Sometimes you may set it up where you may leave access for this thing for a period of a week, maybe. But the problem is when you leave access accounts still active, I've already seen situations where an individual has made backdoors for themselves. They've logged in from a remote capability, and what ended up happening is their accounts were still active, and they went in and they caused all kinds of mayhem and destruction. Now, granted, that was a really stupid idea, because he ends up going to jail for something like that. But at the end of the day, don't do that. But you should. That's why you should remove those accounts access immediately after leaving. Some other additional precautions you can have is audit. IT personnel with elevated permissions, that is a big deal. So IT, guess what? They touch almost everything. And having them with elevated permissions, is usually not a good idea. And you need to audit those people to make sure they're doing the right thing. Because they all do have permissions. And so therefore, well, I shouldn't say all, many of them do. And especially when you start dealing with domain admins and so forth, you got to audit them to make sure that they're doing what they say. They're not surfing the web with their domain admin credentials. That's a bad idea. High-risk employees, your R&D and your senior leaders, those are also ones you need to audit just because they are typically targeted from a cybersecurity standpoint. Hackers will go after these senior leaders. Sometimes they go after them because they have a little bit more information that normal people like myself wouldn't have, so they go after them. R&D is because they have intellectual property knowledge that they may go after them as well. So those are something to consider. And then the cybersecurity leaders, they will go after them as well because many times they have the list of vulnerabilities that are out there. So as working on your CISSP and your cybersecurity space, you need to make sure that you are connected with that. All right, so that was all about the CISSP training that we had set up for this podcast. We're now going to roll into the CISSP exam questions. We are now talking domain 5 of the CISSP exams. All right, in this question, we're going to get into usernames and passwords. When looking at user logs, the purpose of the username and password provides the following. Which one is it? A, identification. B, authentication. C, accountability. D, authorization. And the answer is A. The username ensures that the correct identification is used when accessing the account. So you want to understand that it's important that you have these correct username when they're accessing this. And as you're dealing with logs, it's also important to ensure that the username is connected, because what ends up happening is if you don't have a username, it's pretty hard to get, and we talk it non-repudiation. Get $10 word. Basically, and that's a good word. It's a really good word to make a sentence a little bit more simple, but you want to be able to prove that the hacker actually did what they said they did. And if you don't have usernames, or you don't know what was the account that actually worked it. So it's important that you have the username available in these logs to ensure that you can track it all back to the right username or the right device. All right, this question, preventative access controls. Which one of the following is a preventative access control type? A, CCTV. B, background checks. C, man-trap. Man-trap. I like saying man-trap. D, none of the above. Which one of those is a preventative access control? C, man-traps are considered a preventative access control that will limit individuals from a specific facility. CCTV is there and available so that if you want to and usually at CCTV, honestly, there's nobody really, in many cases, 24/7 viewing of CCTV does not exist. So therefore, it's important that you understand that's usually a control that's after the fact. A background check, again, is done beforehand and usually is before the person even enters the area. And then a man trap is really designed as a preventative for a facility. So if you're not familiar with what a man trap is, you walk, doors open up, you walk in, doors close behind you, and then if it validates your identity, it allows you in. If it does not, it says, you will not leave. Stand here until security forces come and get you. So yeah, and then they're also watching for if you carry your buddy in, carrying your buddy into a facility on your back. They have pressure plates going, okay, this guy weighs 450 pounds. He's either really big or there's two people. So that's something else that they keep in mind. So those are preventative access control type is the man trap. All right, so that's all we have for today's podcast. These are the links: ISC Squared Training Study Guide, Quizlet, Infosec Institute, and Wikipedia. All right, again, if I haven't told you yet, I'll tell you again. Check out my training at udemy.com. That's Udemy for your CISSP training, udemy.com. Or you can check it out at reducecyberrisk.com/CISSP-training. And you can get all of your CISSP needs at a very good price with Udemy. It's extremely, extremely inexpensive with utilizing Udemy. And you can get your pricing there at that location. Again, CISSP training domains 1 through 8 is available for you. All right, I hope you all enjoyed this podcast. I always enjoy giving this stuff out because cybersecurity stuff is cool. It really is. All right, you guys have a wonderful day. We'll catch you on the flip side. See ya. Thanks so much for joining me today on my podcast. If you like what you heard, please leave a review on iTunes, as I would greatly appreciate your feedback. Also, check out my CISSP videos that are on YouTube. Just search for Shon, that's S-H-O-N, Gerber, and you'll find a plethora of content to help you pass the CISSP exam. Lastly, head over to Reduce Cyber Risk and look at the cornucopia of free CISSP materials available to all my email subscribers. Thanks again for listening. See ya.